We're up and running. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. You're back to the Moratua podcast. We have the team here, Victor, Horata, Miriam, and myself, and we're back to give you more nuggets to help you, whether you are a contractor, whether you are a virtual assistant, whether you are a remote worker, or whether you're a client or a leader in business. Our goal is to support you with lessons we've learned from business, and to better help you be successful in your endeavors and in your ventures. So for today, we're going to be talking about remote work ghosting, what to do when your contractor or your employee who's working remotely disappears, how to manage those drop-offs or delays or downtime, and how to still maintain the daily operations of your business when ghosting happens, right? And what is important, why are we having this conversation? We've been in situations where, maybe you are a leader in your business and all of a sudden your client or your employee starts missing deadlines. They start dropping off in communication. All the communication slowly fades. You can't reach them. You can't call them. And these disruptions can derail the momentum in your business and strain relationships with you and with possible clients that you're managing, right? So we're going to explore why this happens, what the signals are beneath the surface to let you know when these are possibly going to be happening in your business, and most importantly, how to build remote work structures and culture that encourages consistency, accountability, and trust. So if you're managing global teams like we are, or you're scaling your business with some remote talent, this is a conversation that you definitely do not want to miss. So for today, we're going to have just a few questions. I'm going to throw it back and forth. So my first question is going to go to Horata, right? So every company that works with remote or freelance talent will eventually face, delays or communication drop-offs. It's something that we've noticed is common. How should leaders respond when, a contractor or remote worker suddenly disappears or stalls in their delivery?
All right, that's a great question. Thank you, Dumebi. The first thing which I think is always key is to reach out
Mm.
and try to understand what the issue is, right? One of the things that can really kill us is assuming. We don't know what is going on in someone's everyday life. Maybe something is happening in their personal life that they can't really speak to their boss about that is affecting their delivery or causing them to simply look like they disappeared. So, thing number one, I would say definitely reach out, try to get a hold of them, try to understand what's going on. We've had a case where the contractor was unreachable, in which case, if you have a third party mediator, try to go through the mediator to see if they can find out what's wrong. And if all else fails, honestly, cut your losses. If they've decided to disappear, do the necessary work to get them off of your payment roster, get them out of the WhatsApp groups, change their access to very important confidential files. But first, as long as you've tried communicating yourself and through a mediator and it didn't work, then I think go ahead and just offboard them even without them being there.
Right, right, right. So I'm still going to lead into you for the next question. And this,
Yeah.
but that question is going to be, so what are red flags that clients, leaders, business leaders, operations managers should look out for in early engagement that can signal a potential problem down the line when it
Yeah.
in regards to remote work ghosting?
Yeah. Ugh. Okay, this is a really good question, especially since we're seeing a trend come up nowadays that's called quiet quitting, which
Mm,
is essentially where somebody wants to quit their job, but they can't necessarily leave. And so they do small things. Well, the way some people explain it is you do just enough to not get you fired, but you really don't want to work there anymore. I mean, some early red flags that I would say from experience. One, if you start to see a change in their communication style, for example, they're no longer communicating as consistently as they used to, keeping you up to date on what's happening on projects, or they're responding much slower than they used to
mhm.
before, that's a red flag. And if they are like that from the beginning, that's already a red flag. That's a problem. Because communication is really important when you're working with somebody, especially somebody who's working remotely, somebody you don't see in an office every day. Communication is really all you have to make sure the work gets done. In some cases, you could be working with somebody who gives you vague answers to things. I'm not sure if you've experienced this. When you ask somebody a question, for example, you ask them, so what's your approach going to be to this project? And, it's something like, oh, don't worry, I've done it before. You don't need to worry about it. Or I've got this. I'll update you later once it's ongoing. That may be a little bit problematic down the line, right? Especially if this is happening from jump when you haven't had a chance to work with this person and really see what they're capable of. That
Right.
could be an issue. them missing small deadlines. I mean, we know we all have large deadlines, we have small deadlines. If somebody's missing small deadlines down the line, that eventually leads to missing big deadlines. So you really want to, when you see that happening, communicate, ask what's going on, ask what support they need to make sure they don't miss deadlines, because then it becomes a bigger problem and it affects productivity. That's just the few that I can think of. I mean, I want to hand it over to Vic because I think we've had different experiences that range outside of our work at Maratua. So I'd be interested to hear from his experience what red flags he's seen.
Can you guys hear me?
So we can hear you.
Yes.
I'm literally a victim of what we're speaking of, so I feel like it's perfect timing. For some reason, my Zoom keeps crashing. So I'm hearing everything that's happening, I'm seeing everything that's happening, but the name is off. And yes, that's my current situation. So yes, this is practical example. What do you do? Be patient, guys. That's the first thing. If you're listening to this, somebody goes up, be patient. I'm sorry if I lost the second question. I did get the first one, so you might have to remind me of the second one. But just touching on one where I said be patient. But go ahead, and I'm going to take them together. Do maybe just what's the question again?
So the second question was more so for remote workers who are ghosting or, you know, let me rephrase it. So for leaders, operation managers, team leaders, how can they, what are some red flags they can identify earlier on that can tell them, oh, that this remote employee, this remote talent is probably going to ghost them down the line? What are some red flags that you can see in the beginning of that working relationship? And so for some
Excuses.
excuses, okay.
Oh my goodness. Once a person starts giving so many excuses, chances are you're going to be dealing with that for a very long time. And you can pretty tell, like from the first task or from the first week, there's always a reason why something went off. I mean, sometimes it's not always the case. Like you have cases where somebody joins and the first week their internet is just a devil to them and nothing is working. So it might look like they are the problem. So the recommendation I would have for that would be empathy, right? Like try and empathize with the person as much as possible until it's no longer realistically practical, like Horata said, off board them, right? But as much as possible, you want to empathize with them. So the first one will be excuses. The second one will be lack of accountability and lack of discipline. To work remotely requires a lot more discipline than going to the office because there's no boss who's coming to knock on your door. So for example, I saw a video on Instagram, I was just scrolling on my phone, and he was saying working remotely from home sometimes is like, he had a cigarette in his hand and he had drinks and he had loud music going on by like 7:59. And by 8 a.m., he was dressed in a white shirt and saying, "Hey, good morning, team. Good morning, Sophia." And that is literally what it takes to work remotely sometimes. The discipline to know when to stop and be accountable, right? If a person doesn't have those two things, it's a major, major red flag. They might be very competent, but if they lack those two things, remote work might not just be for them. So not being able to work remotely does not mean they're not competent. It might just mean that it's not the kind of work that is ideal for them to deliver their best results, right? So I want to emphasize that so that employers have a clear understanding of it. I think I'll stop there and just let somebody else speak. But yeah, those are my top three: excuses, lack of accountability, and lack of self-discipline.
I would also say somebody who over promises. Have you ever worked with somebody who over promises and under delivers consistently? That's a major red flag. Somebody who promises you the world and all its galaxies, like this project is going to be great, this is what it's going to look like. And then when they finally deliver it, they come with those excuses that Victor was talking about because they've under delivered. That's going to be a problem along the line. Yeah.
Shoot.
Oh, you're muted.
All right, I'm going to lean into Victor just a little bit more. And we're going to talk about systems and structures, right? So we're going to ask, my question now is for company leaders and team leaders and operations managers. How can companies structure their onboarding expectations and communications and systems to reduce chances of ghosting or downtime? What are some systems they need to put in place or should think about putting in place?
Vic, did we lose you?
You can hear us? So while we're waiting for Victor, Horata, I'm going to put that question on you for a minute.
Oh, wait, I think he's
What do you
coming
think,
back.
Person? Oh, he's back.
Hi, maybe can you repeat the question one more time?
Of course. So the question was, we're moving. So we've talked about some red flags you can see when you're working with somebody. to predict
Okay.
if they're going to ghost you at some point, right? But now we want to reverse. We want to go, rewind up until the point of onboarding. What are some systems, structures in terms of communication, in terms of culture, in terms of onboarding that leaders can put into place to better facilitate that working relationship such that you can successfully prevent ghosting down the line?
I think first of all, expectations. Set expectations clearly. Like the JD should be clear from the beginning, right? It's not the length of the JD, it's the clarity of the JD that's going to go very far. So some people just go to ChatGPT lately and just put like everything they can think of, and ChatGPT would always give you information no matter what you tell it, right? Sometimes that information might not just be useful at the moment or helpful for human practical use. So expectations should be very clear from the beginning. If you want to prevent those red flags from happening, have a good system of setting expectations. Moving on with communication, like find a good system to communicate, whether that's WhatsApp, Google Meet, Zoom. So for example, you find that in this part of the world, in Africa, for example, Google Meet is probably the best for meetings, right? So if that's what you could use that if it works best, right? Zoom is great as well. Teams is great as well. Zoho is great as well. But in my experience, Google typically is the easiest for people to use on this part. I've met people also in the US who are like that, but find a good method or means of communication to avoid that. And then finally get a good head of operations, right? And it's critical because that person is going to build the systems on which you're going to grow on. So if you have, I've seen companies where they have like great vision, but the operation system is just not great. It's not scalable. It's not efficient. So you find that causes more frustration for remote people because they have to send a check-in every 2 hours, whereas they could meet once a week and they'll be maybe 10% or 20% more productive. So get somebody who is a great operations manager and who understands the rudiments of remote work, and get a good remote operations manager to set up systems for you that will help you scale and grow very quickly. Those would be my 3 points. I think I'm on my 3 points today. So I'm going to stop there and pass the mic to somebody else.
Yes, at this point, I'm going to move it over to Horata. What do you think are some good techniques or practices in the beginning of onboarding to better, prevent such ghosting tendencies?
Yeah. Okay. So Vic made excellent points, right? And to add on to that, I would say one, ease them into the work, right? Create small milestones early on to help them build momentum as they go into the work and to build trust between you and them. It is so overwhelming to step into a new role, right? And you are bombarded on all sides with these large tasks and you're being pulled into projects within the first 2 weeks of being at the job when you are just trying to find your footing and try to understand how things work. So set those small milestones and also make them clear to the person to help ease them into the work. Another point, be very intentional about making them feel included in the team. And I'm saying this from also my own experience, being the only person working as a fully remote worker and everyone else is in the same country and they're working hybrid. There was so much intentionality around involving me and also making sure that I got acquainted with staff. Like I had small coffee chats with people. I got pulled into meetings with people just to listen, just to familiarize myself with the people in that meeting and the things that they do. They weren't expecting me to give my opinion or anything. They just wanted me to listen. They were just including me. And then they started to ask me small things like, Horata, this is what's going on. What do you think? And slowly but surely, that made me feel so part of the team that even they themselves said they forget that I'm all the way in a different country and that they never see me in person. So there has to be an intentionality around it. And that's what Victor's talking about also when he says, get a really good director of operations who sets systems like this in place, right? Who helps to build a culture that will feel inclusive, whether you're working fully remote or hybrid or whatever, because that sets the tone for the contractor or the freelancer's time within that company. And if you do it really well and you treat them well and you make them feel part of the team, then the chances of them ghosting you significantly lessen because they're enjoying the work and they like working with the people there, and that's what we want. But also, lastly, agree on a regular rhythm for checking in. Nobody likes to be micromanaged. In fact, that's why a lot of people end up ghosting jobs because they feel like they can't breathe. Their boss is on their neck all the time, wanting to micromanage every single thing that they do, how they write reports, who they send it to, what they say in emails. That is not a good management style. Rather, figure out what is a good rhythm for us to check in. Right? For a project, do we set particular milestones and then we check in at every milestone? What will work for us and stick to it? Yeah, so that's what I would add on there to what Victor said.
I'm going to press it just a little bit more. It's not on my list of questions, but what you're saying about, all that stuff is making me possibly think that sometimes the problem might be with, not maybe the problem, but as the leaders, ourselves as leaders, managers, team marketing leaders, etc., might be contributing to the ghosting situations that we're experiencing right now. So what would you say are some good personal check-ins we have as managers, such that we don't chase our employees from us because they can run. It's remote work. They can run far. They are far enough to
Yeah.
run far enough. So, what are some personal tendencies that we need to have some checks about? I love what you said about, micromanaging. Any other things you like to pick at?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Aside from micromanaging, I think we should also check in about how we respond
Mm,
to our employees as people in
mm,
general, not just as employees, right? Some of the best workplaces are workplaces that recognize that you are not some machine or some data point, some number that helps to get certain things done. You are a human being with a life outside of work. And some of the best managers I've ever come across are people that consistently integrate that into their management style and into how they interact with employees. So check in with yourself. How are you looking at your employees? Are you seeing that they are people beyond just your assistant? Or are you only focused on what they can give you work-wise, whether they are sick or not?
mm.
That's the first thing I can think of. Vic, I'm gonna throw the ball to you while I'm reflecting.
What do you do to as an employer? What can you do? Let me think. Apart from I was going to start by saying checking with them as human beings, but Hart already said that.
Mm,
What you could do to help employees would be a good person, right? I think that see the thing about remote work, right, for employers, if you listen, is that no matter how great the company is, no matter how many freebies you give, free perks and all of that stuff, at the end of the day, they're people. If you're not a
Mm,
good leader, like they don't want to have to wake up in their house feeling tortured every day.
mm,
That's the difference. Because if it was a big ass office, they could hide in the corner of the office and avoid seeing the boss, and they'll be fine. Right? Go for the Monday meetings, just do the things they have to do and get out of the office, check in with other people. But then now they're at home, they wake up first in the morning at 8 a.m. They have to jump on a call with somebody they genuinely don't like. There's only so much they could do that for before they start trying to avoid you. Either they're going to claim their network is terrible, or there's something going on and trying to keep the meeting shorter, or just getting tired of listening to you speak. That's the context here. It's important to keep that in mind. So remember that there are people, be a good person. Um, and then finally, be practical and reasonable. The thing about remote work is you could become very irrational thinking about like you want magic to happen sometimes, and you just have to remember sometimes that it's not practical to expect that. Like this person has 10 things they're doing, and you want them to do the 11th thing and get it to you by tomorrow morning by 8 a.m. And you're like, oh yes, I know you have a lot on your plate, but just get me this 11th thing. I'm like, yes, but it's not practical. They're going to burn out, right? And then you start hearing talks of their mental health is at stake and all of that
mm.
stuff. So it's very, very important to be practical, be reasonable, and honestly, if it's not something that is critical, urgent, and tied to a client's expectations that is needed immediately, be calm about it. Relax, have some breathing room, like let people breathe, right? There'll
Yeah.
be missed deadlines, there will be mistakes, there'll be like miscommunication, there'll be miscommunication, there'll be sometimes misunderstandings between like what was expected versus what was done. Breathe, breathe, please breathe. If you don't, you're gonna probably crash or you're gonna crash the team. I believe
yeah,
is that question for everybody who
the
I'm not sure.
question. And I mean, just to add on to Victor, I would say be flexible. Life is like ebbs and flows, right? Seasons are different. No 2 days are exactly the same. As a manager, you need to be flexible. Like when you come into a space, into a meeting virtually, and you're feeling that the energy is off, it's okay sometimes. We're not saying all the time. It's okay sometimes to say, okay, guys, what's going on? I know we have a whole agenda, but what's going on? Do we need a few hours off? Do we need to, what? Like be flexible and recognize that really no 2 days are the same. Sometimes you need to do what's best to get your team back on track and fully
Mm,
focused and ready to go 2 times harder the next day instead of just being rigid and going, no, we need to do this today. It can't be changed. We have to. There's no two ways about it. So that's my little add-on. But back to Jumibi's question in the chat.
That's such a perfect segue. We have a question in the chat. Thank you, Victor, for calling that out. So this is great because we've talked about, the fact that remote workers do tend to ghost their employers. We've talked about the red flags you can see when that's happening. We've talked about some preliminary things you can do or set up to prevent such things happening. We've talked about some personal checks in ourselves as leaders that can prevent ghosting down the line. But let's deal with when it does happen. The inevitability of someone on your team just ghosting you. And maybe they're managing a client portfolio, maybe they're managing a critical project. The question is now, how do you deal with it, right? So the question I have in the chat is, when project goes off track because of ghosting, how do you pivot quickly without damaging timelines or morale? That's a big question. And I'm going to throw it to Victor. Let's start with Victor.
When a project goes off track, how do you pivot quickly? I think I already started talking about this in my last point. As a manager who works remotely, know what's important at every point in time, because some things could actually say, guys, we're taking the weekend, let's come back to this on Monday, and nothing is going to go wrong. It might look like it, but nothing would. If you think about it practically, nothing is going to go wrong. That deadline is flexible enough for you to be flexible with your people, right? So I think the first thing would be flexible. The second thing is, how do you pivot quickly, would be to understand what is at stake at each point in time. It's still on the first point, but this is slightly different. It's understanding it to the point where you're able to know how to prioritize. Like you know how to change gears as quickly as it is demanded, not as quickly as you think it should be, but as quickly as it's demanded. In this particular use case where you have a crisis or you have a problem or there's something that is going wrong, something is not going according to plan, it's quickly as demanded. Like know how to prioritize as quickly as demanded. Know the strength of your team is the third thing. Because if you know the strength of your team, you're able to play to their strength in those moments and pull out the best work possible in the shortest possible time. If you don't understand that, you're going to be putting a lot of pressure on the entire team, whereas you just need 2 or 3 people to hop on a call and sit down for 3-4 hours, and that problem is going to be resolved, right? So know the strength of your team and understand the capacity of your team. I said I'm on 3 pointers today, right? So that's my third point. Thank you. I'm going to pass back to somebody else.
All right, we're coming back to you. How would you advise? Passing the mic back to you. How would you advise someone to pivot quickly as a leader? We need a real microphone. I need a microphone emoji, and I just put it over here. Anyway.
Taking it from you. I mean, just to add on to Victor's really fantastic points, communication is key, right? It doesn't hurt for you as a manager to bring the team that's left together and say, okay, listen, here's the situation. Here's what's going on. How do we go from here? Like communicate, be confident about, okay, we can make things happen. Like we can do the next steps while also being realistic. Like just focusing on what are the must-haves to get this project done and not the nice-to-haves. Like let's remove the fluff now. Let's focus on the major points. And if we can focus on the major points, then we can meet the deadline. And just also making sure to keep those communication lines open with your team members, the people that are left. Ask them what they need now that they are 1 person or 2 people down. What do you need to get the work done? Do we need to pull someone else from another team into the team to assist temporarily? Do you need some online resources we have to pay for? What do you need? And give the team that's there what they need as best as possible. That's my little add-on.
I have a microphone here. Oh my gosh, it left. I have it here, right here. Look at that. Look at that. Yeah, microphone. That's for the microphone. Okay, so we've successfully reached the end of this podcast. For everyone listening, it's all about the fact that we are in a remote environment, and the gig economy is going to keep growing, and we are most likely going to be leading teams that are living in different geographical locations, different time zones, different cultures, and the goal is going to be how to manage such teams. And the fact that people can leave and ghost is a critical part of it's an expectation we should all have, and learning how to deal with that is something we all need to learn. So on that note, I am going to ask for a quick advice from Victor and Farata. And what I'm trying to hear is, from this conversation, what is the most important thing you need to know as a leader that might be possibly dealing with a team member that's going to ghost? What's one critical thing that you need them to keep in mind?
Communication is key.
Come on. I
might have stolen that from Victor, but
come on. That felt like, come on.
Communication is key.
I think the 2 things I would say would be, And I had them in my head for a second, but then I just said something that just went out of my head. But yes, the two things would be, listen, if you're listening to me as an employer, get a good operations manager. I cannot stress it enough. It would affect everything about your remote team. Get a good operations manager. Number two, which is probably more important, be a good person that practices empathy. It will save your team from a crisis multiple times, countless number of times. If you're able to just sit and understand the context, the background, and the situation, putting yourself in the person's shoes, then you're able to make better informed decisions while considering two things: the person's feelings and who they are as a person, and their capabilities and the work that is at stake. That way, you can take care of your team and take care of your clients, and everybody's happy. Remote work is the best work. Thank you very much.
Get you
Love
a
that, love
Victor
that, love that.
operations director.
And facts. Let us tell you facts. But thank you so much. Thank you to the team. I think one thing I would just add to is, as you're building your team, try not to make everything center on one teammate.
Yes.
Build in a better support system such that your entire operations is not built on one individual who's working remotely. We've seen that happen before. It's not fun.
Yeah.
But again, thank you all. Thank you to our panelists, Harata and Victor, for being here, for having this conversation with us. Thank you for everyone who is listening. We hope this conversation has helped you as you think about running your teams and you think about how one or two of them might leave you in the future. It might not be an easy transition process. So we hope this has blessed you, and look out for more tips and tricks and more advice from the Monitor team. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Guys, if you have any suggestion on the topics you want us to cover, please just go ahead and drop them in the comment section. And yes, I will try and do 4 points next time instead of 3 points. Thank you, everybody.
Because you're such an overachiever.
Right. We should probably have a 4. I need to find a way to edit this stuff. All right. Bye, guys.